Welcome to the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, Associate Editor Mark Demko.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bowhunting Podcast. Right now, it's the middle of May. Turkey seasons are coming to an end or in full swing, depending where you live in the country. But, you know, when you think about spring bow hunting, there's another great opportunity, primarily north of the border, and that's black bear hunting. Now, I'm very excited. I have a very special guest today, Mike Stroff of Savage Outdoors TV. Mike, how are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us, especially since you've been on the road and traveling and just got back today. Now, you've done a bit of black bear hunting over the years with the bow and all over Canada. So tell me a little bit about that. What really got you into black bear hunting? What do you love about it?
What got me into black bear hunting was probably, I love to pursue just about any kind of big game there is, and having that spring opportunity, because it's kind of, everybody's got cabin fever a little bit, and, being able to get out and have go on a good hunt in the springtime, the bears are one of the best options for that. And that's probably what got me to go on my first hunt. And then after that, just kind of fell in love with doing it because, it's a hunt, depending on how you do it, that's pretty high success rate if you do the baited hunts. But then you got the spot and stalk options, and there's a bunch of different ways to hunt them. And I've done a lot of, or kind of done it all. But I always come back to those baited hunts because you can sit there and if you're at a good location, see a lot of bears. I just like the action. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and absolutely. As a matter of fact, you're actually heading out over the weekend, aren't you?
Yes, I'm leaving in the morning. We are headed up to Saskatoon. We'll be hunting north of Saskatoon about 4 hours there in Saskatchewan with Mike Grunman, Saskadrenalin Outfitters. I've hunted with him a lot over the years. He's one of the better black bear places I've ever been.
Yeah. And, when you think about bear hunting, obviously you can sort of run the gamut. You talked about the different styles, obviously from spot and stalk to hunting over bait, but you can find a lot of different opportunities. When you look at Canada as a whole, there's some great reasons to hunt in the eastern part of Canada, and there's some excellent reasons to hunt in the western part of Canada. You want to maybe touch on some of the different outfitters that you've hunted with during your career and maybe what you liked about them, what was interesting about those experiences?
Yeah, for sure. I guess first I would, talk about Mike Grunman and Saskadrenalin Outfitters there in Saskatchewan. There's very few places I've been, and I've been to a lot of bear camps on a spring hunt where you're going to see as many big bears as Mike's going to show you in a week. He's got a huge hunting area that he, does very little pressure. This area is just massive. He could have 2 or 3 times as many hunters, if not more than that, than what he does. But it's kind of like whitetail hunting. The less pressure you put on, the more success you're going to have. And he just puts on a great hunt. And that's why I go there year after year. The only years I've missed that I can remember was the COVID years. And finally, that's all past us, or at least I hope it's all past us, and we can get back to being normal again and get out there and hunt some. So I'm excited to get back up there. There should be some really big bears to hunt because they haven't hunted them really. The U.S. folks or Americans haven't been across the border to hunt really in 2 seasons. So a lot of those bears that were big 2 years ago, they ought to be really big now. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen when we get up there. We're a little early. I always go early on before he gets real busy with clients, and it's just a great hunt. If I had to pick a place, that'd be one for sure. I've done a bunch of hunts in Quebec a long time ago with Claude Turcotte. Claude, I haven't talked to him in a long time, but not for any reason other than we just haven't gone there. But I believe Claude probably still puts on a pretty good hunt because his hunts were really good back in the day when I went there. And then I've done hunts, with your Christian Berg there in New Brunswick. We did a bear hunt up there. He actually lined that up. And I'm trying to think, it's terrible. I'm having a brain fart. Lindsay Sporting Camps. That's who it was. And he's got a great outfit, especially for folks in the Northeast here in the States. that's an easy drive over there. You drive through Maine, cross over, you're not going very far, and they have a lot of bears. They may not be as big as some of the bears in Western Canada, but man, he'll push on some bears. It's pretty good. So there's a lot of options. I've hunted bears in BC too, a long time ago. In BC, that's more of a spot and stock hunt because they're not baiting them over there. So you can go at it a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of really good bear outfitters. And I know I'm leaving some guys out probably, but if you do your homework, you can find a good place to hunt. You just want to get in that big remote country. That's what it really comes down to.
It's funny you mentioned about the COVID crisis and the borders being closed. And, a lot of those outfitters that we're talking about are sort of, let's call them mom and pop outfitters or smaller businesses. They were hit pretty hard by the pandemic.
Oh,
especially you think 90% probably or more of their clients may, depending where you're at, they may come from the United States. So I'm actually going up to an outfitter in Quebec in beginning of June. So I'm looking forward to that. And they said the same thing. They said, we haven't had a lot of hunting pressure for the bears the past couple of years. We're expecting some bigger bruins. And, it's something that's just very exciting for those who have never done it before. It's a whole different experience. Now, you're also a guide and outfitter. You have SOE hunts, and you offer hunts in Texas for whitetails. You offer hunts in Illinois and Iowa. So you've been doing this a long time. When you put on your guiding hat, if somebody's looking for a bruin hunt and they don't have a super recommendation, so they're sort of starting from scratch, even if they do the research, there's probably things you have to keep in mind about looking into and planning a bear hunt. What are some of the first things that come to your mind when you're looking into booking a hunt?
Yeah. So if you're looking to book a hunt, one thing I would tell you is, like you say, you do your homework and you talk to their references and you do all those things and you kind of figure out what's going on. The big thing about bears, in my opinion, especially if you want to try for a big bear, is the lack of pressure. So, the questions to ask would be, how big is your hunting area? How many baits are you running? Because you want to have a lot of different options. And how many hunters are you going to bring in to hunt those baits during the course of that season? That matters to me a whole lot more than necessarily talking to some of the references. The references are going to tell you what kind of camp they run, what kind of guy they are. Are they ethical? Are they good people? Is it somebody you'd want to spend time with? Those are all very important things. But when you get down to the hunting side, it to me is all about pressure. Because I've hunted with some black bear outfitters that they pound the pavement. Boy, they really overdo it. Just too many guys. And so the bears are going to be smaller, and boy, they're going to be spooky around the baits. If you go to a place that doesn't have a lot of pressure and they don't take a lot of hunters, the bears are a lot more relaxed when they come into the baits. Your success rate is going to be a lot higher, and your chance for a bigger bear is going to be a lot higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look from east to west across Canada, you'll find that your bear hunts, your bruin hunts in the eastern part of the country might be a little more affordable. But because of having to get into more remote areas and less hunting pressure as you get into Western Canada, you might find the price goes up a little bit. It's well worth the investment, though, especially if you're looking for a trophy-sized bear. Then, of course, the West has the opportunity for color phases, different color phases, from cinnamon to brown. Now, have you had opportunities to hunt all the different color phases during your career?
I have. We've been lucky enough to hunt a bunch of different places. The guy I was talking about, Mike Grunman, with Saskatchewan Outfitters, probably 1 in 3 of his bears is a color phase bear. So when you're hunting up there, you got a really good chance of getting a color bear. That's the one place I haven't killed a color bear, but he's got a bunch. Everybody else seems to get them. I'm hoping for that one will be showing up this week when I get up there. But I have killed them. That is a neat opportunity when you talk about hunting out west in Canada. Just something different. If you've killed a couple of black bears, it's cool to change it up, and man, they are pretty. And it's kind of it's the novelty of that bear, and then getting a trophy sized bear that's a color phase, a whole nother level of uniqueness, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great experience. And, as we're talking about, thinking about going on a bear hunt, what you need to plan for and questions to ask the outfitters, the other thing that popped in my mind is you really have to let them know if you're coming for an archery setup. Well, most of them are equipped for archery hunters. They all offer different types of opportunities. Some guys might use ground blinds versus tree stands. Some people may primarily have firearms hunters and don't cater as much to bow hunters. Those are important things to try and convey to them as well. I'll remember.
Sorry. Yeah, you definitely, it's a good point you bring up. You definitely don't want to not talk about bow hunting if you're going bow hunting, because if you go to a camp that's a gun camp, you're going to struggle bow hunting because they're just not set up right for it. Now, in my experience, most bear outfitters are set up for bow hunters because for whatever reason, hunting bears with the bow is very popular. So most of them have to be set up for archery because they have a lot of guys coming to bow hunt. And typically you're hunting them in really dark, tight timber spots. And so, being close to the bait and being tight and, breaking that yardage down to under 30 yards is typically fairly easy.
Yeah, I had hunted one time, I want to say it was 2005 with an outfitter up in Eastern Canada, and their clientele was primarily firearms hunters. And I was hunting with a bow. It was the last week of the season, which can be pretty good as the boars are out looking for mates and things like that. But they had a gun stand up, and they hunted the whole season and could never get the bear off that bait. And he said to me, you by chance have a climbing stand? Well, I had a climbing stand in my truck, and I used it, and I climbed along a logging road just off the bait. And it was literally the last night of the season, and that bear walked right 20 yards in front of me, right down the logging road. So it obviously had a pretty good understanding of the setup of the bait and where the hunters were sitting and things like that, because they were never able to get that bear until the last day. So that made me think, it's sometimes important. It may seem obvious to you and I, or someone who's planning an archery hunt, but just make sure you convey what you're looking for and everything as you're talking to an outfitter or a guide.
Yeah, I think it's very important.
Yeah. Now, the other thing for people who have been to Canada bear hunting, and for people who haven't, black flies and mosquitoes are like nothing you've seen anywhere else in the country. That's just so important.
Thermacell.
Pardon me?
Thermacell.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, you can go up 1 week, and depending how you hit it, you won't get bit at all. You can go up a week before that or a week after, and literally you step out of your truck and within 3 minutes you're eaten alive.
Oh yeah. It can be pure misery if you don't have the right stuff. So, taking a head net, because if they get bad and just get so intense, because you're doing those long afternoon sits. So it's real important to be able to withstand the beating, I guess. So having a head net in your pack's a good thing. Having a thermocell with lots of refills, good thing. Even if you can't fly with the butane, into Canada, buy it when you get there. Trust me, it is worth its weight in gold. I've had guys that can't, but they would have paid $1,000 from a thermocell. If they're bad, they're bad. So you got to have it, and just prepare for that, because, like you say, from 1 week to the next, it can be really bad, and then they're not there at all. Looking at the temperatures, what I'm going to deal with next week on my hunt, it doesn't look warm enough, so I think they probably won't have much for bugs. But boy, as soon as it warms up, they'll be out like crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you when you said you were going to northern Saskatchewan. What are you looking for as far as temperatures? What do you think it's going to be like as far as the highs and lows?
Looking at the extended weather today, it looks like it's going to be mid-30s at night and in the 50s during the day. So, pretty cool weather.
Well, I hope you have a lot of success when you go up. And like you said, it should be a great experience. But it's funny when you think about bear hunting. It's amazing how quiet they can be when they move through the forest for somebody who's never been. I mean, it's just like all of a sudden they're just there right in front of you.
Yeah. If a bear doesn't want to be seen or heard, he's not. For a big animal like that, you would think they'd make a lot more noise than they do. If he doesn't want to be heard, he doesn't. Typically, when you hear a black bear come to a bait, it's because he did that on purpose. Like, they don't make noise walking through the woods. If he snaps a big branch, or it's almost like they're trying to get something to react or check and see if there's anything else at the bait, or a dominant boar's doing it on purpose to let everybody know he's walking in. They don't make a lot. If they want to sneak in, a lot, like you say, you look down, they're just standing there. It's like, where'd he come from?
And first time, I never mind embarrassing myself. First time I ever went on a Canadian bear hunt. I'm sitting there and it's quiet, and I see this head come out, and then it disappeared. And I thought to myself, okay, what did I do? Did he smell me? Did I do something wrong? Well, 15 minutes later, he came out just behind the bait. And it's like, they're so cautious, and they really have a great understanding of their surroundings and things like that. And it's amazing how they move through the forest, and you see them and they disappear, and then they show up just a couple minutes later in a different spot. So incredible experience. Now, what's your favorite memory of bear hunting, since you've been bear hunting so many times in Canada? Is there something that jumps out at you?
Well, we were sitting there. We had been running trail cameras, and we knew a particular bear was coming to this bait, and he was a big black bear with a white patch on his chest. And so we'd sat it a couple of times. He didn't show, but if we weren't there, he would come. So we felt like, he knew something was up. So like what you were talking about on the logging road, we adjusted it, left the stand hung and just hung a different stand to try to, because we really didn't know where he was coming from. And so we're like, he must be winding us because we haven't seen him at all. He hasn't come in and spooked away. So we changed our setup, and I heard something behind me, and I turned around, and there was a sow with two cubs there, and both cubs spooked and ran up the tree that we were sitting in, and literally came up, and they weren't on the platform, but they might as well have been. I mean, I could reach down and smack them in my hand. They were right there. Then the mom realizes we're there, and so she's popping her teeth and getting all upset. And then when I looked down at the bait, that big boar we've been looking for was standing there. That's why the cubs ran up the tree, was because he spooked them up the tree, and we didn't even see him coming in because we were watching them. We ended up getting him. But we were sitting here going, "Hey, check this out, filming these bears in the tree." And we looked down, and he's sitting there looking at me. He was there, and he had ran them up the tree.
It's funny you bring that up. I had the same experience in New Brunswick back in the late 90s. I had 3 cubs and a mom come out, and the cubs went up a tree next to me. And I was going to get down as it was getting dark, and she started doing the same thing. And I thought I heard her growling or whatever at the bottom of a tree. And if you never had that, it's a little unnerving if you're not familiar. I mean, you're safe, but I stayed there till it was pitch black. The guide walked in to get me, and I'm hearing impaired. That's an important part of the story there. And he's trying to say something to me, and I'm up in the tree, and I can't understand what he's saying. So finally he just says really loud, he goes, "I think there's a bear still at the bait." And I'm like, "No crap." But it was like, for the first time that happened to me, I'm like, the cubs were up the tree next to me, and the mom's at the base. And I'm like, geez. But anyway, it ended up being something I'll remember the rest of my life. So it was an exciting experience, a little hairy, I would say. But it's just one of those things that makes those trips so special. So, it was just something that has just stuck with me all these years. Now let's switch gears a little bit. So obviously, with bow hunting, most guys are set up for using what they use for deer season or maybe turkeys. But now, as far as you're concerned, do you do anything special with your setup, with your broadheads, with your arrows, as you're preparing to go on a Canadian bear hunt?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't change my setup for black bear a lot from my whitetail setup. Black bears are fairly thin skinned. They're not hard to blow through. As long as you don't hit the shoulder blade, you want to stay away from the shoulder. But, you can blow through them pretty easy. I do have some guys that I hunt with that I'm a fixed blade guy. I've always been, no matter what I'm hunting, I like to cut on impact. I want to blow through it, and I want to get an exit hole. So I've always been a cut on contact fixed blade guy. But if you're going to shoot expandables or mechanicals, black bears are, I don't disagree with that. I guess on the black bears, as thin as their hide is, getting that giant hole because their hair is so long and they got all that fat. Even when they're bleeding like crazy, it's got to run through all that long hair before it ever drips on the ground, unless they're rubbing up against something. So sometimes the blood trails can be a little bit difficult, or the fat will clog up the hole. And then you got to deal with the blood getting through all that thick hair and then dripping on the ground. And if you get that, mechanical head and blow through with a big giant cut that some of them have, you get a little better blood trail out of it. Again, avoid that shoulder. But that'd be one thing different that I might do, because I'm so fixed blade set on whitetails and elk and moose and all the other stuff that, on the bears, that's something you could think about. I'm a 30-inch draw guy, shooting 70 pounds. So I've got a lot of power stroke in my setup anyway, so I don't feel like I've got to get heavier or change anything going from whitetail or whatever I'm hunting to bear. But some guys might look at it differently just based on their draw length and what kind of speed they're shooting, and what kind of kinetic energy they have to make sure. Because you shouldn't have tree sand. That hole in the bottom third of the animals where you get all your blood from. So you want it pouring out the bottom. So getting that exit is super, super important. So you want to think that through, have enough kinetic energy in your setup to where you unless you punch a big bone or something, you're going to blow through them every time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned hunting from tree stands. Have you ever done a ground blind hunt in all your years of going up there for bears?
Oh yeah. Yep, for sure. A lot of times you just got to modify because there's not a good tree, or the tree stand's not working, and you try something from the ground, or the wind's wrong for the tree stand, and you got to brush in. I always tell guys, if something's new, those bears know those baits. They come in there so much. They know their surroundings. They know what's around. if something new is there, you really got to be cautious. But once they get into the bait and you let them relax a little bit, then you kind of own them. So, getting anxious or jumping the gun sometimes is a mistake. If they're coming and they're being cautious, just let them come on in, let them get there. And if they start to eat, then you probably own them unless you do something crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an incredible experience. And, when I was hunting up in Quebec one time, going back to that bear coming down the logging road, it was funny. I never heard it, but I saw it, and I climbed up in a tree. But I was right off the side of the road, and there was a drainage ditch right there. So I wasn't actually that high off the ground, but to the drainage ditch, I was really high. The bear walked and it turned and it looked right at me. And I thought, man, why or how? And it reached up and it swiped a donut out of that tree. And I never knew that somebody hung a donut on the limb of a tree, and then it dropped and went down and went into the bait. So it's like when you're doing this, it's just how aware they are of their senses and that keen sense of smell and what's around them and things like that. But what's a weird curveball question here? But what's the most interesting or the weirdest thing you've ever seen anybody use for a bait on a bear bait? You ever see anything that you went,
I've seen a lot of different things used for sure. The guy in Mike Grunman there at Saskatoon Outfitters, he's got a concrete mixer that he starts pouring his concoction into while it's spinning, and he mixes it all up. So he's got, some sweets, whatever he's getting for bait that year. He uses a lot of grain, and then he'll pour molasses in there, and he just keeps mixing this concoction up and just lets that concrete mixer mix it. And then he puts it in totes and takes it out to the baits. A lot of guys will tack a beaver up. Beavers are the castor smell in the beaver, especially on the boars. They really like to hit baits where, they'll walk right past the sweets and grab that beaver if you stake him to a tree. So, in that part of the world, there's beaver in every creek, every slough, every river. There's no shortage of beaver. And so if they can kill a few beaver and where it's legal to do so, and put one at the bait, and you tack it up high where only the big bears can get a hold of it. And you'll be surprised how many I've seen that the boars, in a lot of cases, they want a little bit of meat. Yeah, they like the sweets, but they want a little bit of meat there too.
Absolutely. And I've seen it run the gamut from donuts and bread to meat and everything else.
I had a guy in Maine that an outfitter up there that they used to get from an M&M factory, the surplus or outdated M&Ms. And that was they would mix that in, and they had a tractor trailer load of M&Ms. So there's all kinds of baits that you can get.
That's phenomenal. You have to wonder if they had a color preference as far as the M&Ms, but that's the first time I've ever heard of like candy out on the bait.
I think the guides would walk around eating the bait as they baited all day. I think that they probably got their fill of their sugar high all day long, walking around eating expired M&Ms.
Now, we've talked a lot about baited bear hunts. Have you ever done the spot and stalk route, whether in the Western U.S. or up in Canada in the Western part?
I have. In fact, I've done a fair amount of spot and stalk in Alaska. I've done a bunch of that. And then in British Columbia, the first bear hunt I actually ever did, I was 16 years old. My dad took me to British Columbia for my 16th birthday present, and we did a spot and stalk hunt, and I killed a bear up there. That's a totally different experience. You do a lot of glassing. It's kind of like hunting brown bears or grizzlies in Alaska or black bear. It doesn't matter. You know areas that bears are going to frequent, areas that, pinch points or travel corridors, and you got to get a good vantage point and just spend the time glassing. Eventually a bear will show. You don't do a lot of running around necessarily, so it's a lot of glassing. But it's cool because, they're out doing their natural thing. They're not coming to a bait. You're just catching them in their element and then trying to, put a move on them if you can.
And I'm imagining at times that's going to be pretty challenging depending on the wind conditions, the weather conditions, trying to get close enough to get a shot.
Well, you better get the wind right. Bears have got great noses. They live and die by their nose. And if they get your wind, game over. So, when you're doing those stalking hunts, you got to plan your stalk around what that wind's doing for dang sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't stress that enough. No matter when you're hunting for bears, you have to make sure that you stay out of their scent because they'll be gone in a flash. So,
or you never see them. When they're coming to a bait, the wind's wrong and you just don't know it. Like I was talking about that one bear where the cubs and the sow came in. I mean, I think what was happening was wherever direction he was coming from, he was getting our wind, never saw us or heard us, and he just wouldn't come in. You don't even know that, because they just don't show up, because they're pretty sharp.
Yeah, it was the same thing with that one I was talking about where the bear wouldn't come into the bait the whole season, and they had a shooting house about 80 yards away. And it wasn't until I took that tree stand and climbed outside of the area where they'd been hunting. It was so coincidental, but it's what ended up working out on that hunt. Now, have you ever had a situation where maybe no matter what you did, you just didn't seem to have any luck that week, but it all came together at the very end?
I'm sure we probably have had some hunts that drug on, but to be honest with you, the recent memory black bear hunts that I've got, we've been real lucky and got them the first couple of days. But again, I'm hunting places, again, when we were talking about earlier about pressure and big areas and enough baits to have the options. If you go hunt like with Mike, he may have 20 baits out, but he's only going to take 10 hunters. And these baits are 20, 30 miles separated. Some of them, you're totally different bears. He's running cameras on all of them. You kind of pick and choose. Okay, this bait's got a big bear. This bait's got a big bear. This one's more consistent. Let's go get him. And so you go give it a couple of days. And typically, if you do it right and the wind's right and you're playing your cards out right, they'll show. And so we've been real lucky, and I haven't had to push them too far. Now I've done some brown bear hunts and grizzly hunts that we pushed it and had to hunt 10, 12 days and bust our tail and didn't get them. So, it just depends on what you're doing. And that could easily happen to us next week. It's all hunting.
Yeah. And that's a whole different ballgame. Now, if you had to estimate, how many times do you think you've been black bear hunting during your hunting career?
I've gone every year since probably 2003. I've done at least one black bear hunt. Minus years.
And is there a spot or a location or a province that's still on your wish list or your bucket list that you're like, I have to get there at some point?
Well, honestly, I've been lucky enough to hunt all the areas I wanted to hunt in Canada. If I had to pick my top one, I really like hunting that, with the Saskatchewan Outfitters up there. That's about as good as it's going to get. And then I guess if I had to rank my second option, it probably wouldn't be in Canada. I'd probably go to Alaska and hunt some of those coastal black bears. They're pretty big over there too. But I've got where I don't have to kill one. I like chasing those big guys around and, just trying to focus in and try to find one of them. And if we don't get one, we don't get one. It's just the way it goes.
What's the biggest bear you've taken during your career,
Black bear?
Yeah.
I killed a 7'3" bear up there. And that's the biggest, square bear that I've shot.
Wow. Incredible. I think when you think about bear hunting, there's so many reasons that, we're talking about all the excitement, but if you do your homework, you can find a really good quality hunt.
Oh yeah.
And affordable. When you look at compared to some of the other, especially like Western hunts and Alaskan hunts, black bear hunting is pretty affordable, especially if you're going to drive in, or you can drive in as opposed to having to flying in and things like that. But if you were going to suggest to a person why they should try a black bear hunt at some point in Canada, what would you tell them?
If you've never done it before and you want that new experience, because we're not buying hunts or animals, we're buying an experience. If you want that cool experience, those baited hunts are really neat because you can see, if it's a good location, a lot of bears. You can see them in their environment. You can see them interact. I think that's probably one of the most fun parts of the hunt for me is watching the bear, especially on the spring hunt where the boars are coming and checking sows and trying to find a girlfriend. Watching them interact is a hell of a lot of fun. And a lot of sits, we don't kill one and come in and go, man, that was cool. You see, 2 boars came in there and ran her all over the place. And then she fought back. She wasn't interested or whatever, and those interactions and the sounds that black bears make. A lot of people don't realize how vocal they are. They make a lot of different noises. And that's pretty cool to be able to watch that at 25 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing we probably should touch on is, people think, like you said when we started, spring bear hunt, great opportunity to extend your hunting season. It's one of the few things you can actually hunt in the spring and early summer if you're a bow hunter. Some of the provinces also offer a fall bear hunt. There's a couple pluses to that. One of them being that the bear is bigger. Bears have a chance to put on some weight and things like that. But if you're looking, a lot of the provinces do offer hunts that are end of August, September, and things like that.
Yep, they sure do.
So, thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilling to have you on the program. I've talked on the phone a couple times, but we never had a chance to see each other face to face. Wish you luck when you head up to Canada this coming week. Hope you have a great experience. And for everybody who's tuning into the Bowhunting podcast, if you're looking for something that you can do as far as extending your bow hunting season, an incredible experience. As you said, you see some beautiful remote country. Check out a Canadian black bear hunt. Thanks for joining us on the Bowhunting podcast.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for downloading the Petersen's Bowhunting podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Petersen's Bowhunting magazine on your local newsstand, or connect with us online at bowhuntingmag.com.